Welcome to Recycled Idaho, where two recycling industry veterans, Brett Eckhart and Nick Snyder, explore Idaho businesses and organizations that are putting in the work to keep Idaho environmentally and economically viable at the same time. Take a listen to how these entrepreneurs, business owners, and operators are making things happen in the great state of Idaho. In this podcast, Nick and I made our way over to Burley, Idaho, to sit down with Josh Bartlome and Nate Francisco of Southern Idaho Solid Waste. These two guys are making waves in the solid waste industry, and they're doing it right here in Idaho. Take a listen and go check out the YouTube version of this podcast, as there's some great video shot of the landfill's daily operations. Sitting here with Nick Snyder from United Metals.
Happy
Josh
to be
Bartlome,
here. Hey.
Southern Idaho Solid Waste. Thanks for taking the time, Josh.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. So, for those of you that don't know out there, Josh Bartlome is the CEO and the president of Southern Idaho Solid Waste. For those of you who don't know about Southern Idaho Solid Waste, Josh is going to give us a little background on the structure, kind of the organization of it.
So we're kind of a one-of-a-kind operation. I didn't know how one-of-a-kind we were until I started to look at other solid waste districts in the United States. And I found that we operate independently of anybody else that we've seen out there. Generally speaking, when you have a solid waste district, you have an enterprise fund, and whatever revenue you generate, it basically funds you for whatever you need to. We're not like that. And the big thing that kind of sets us apart from any other business is everybody's in it to make money, right?
Correct.
We're not in it to make money. We're owned by 7 counties. So in South Central Idaho, we basically handle all of the solid waste disposal for about 11,000 square miles. We've got 7 different counties that own the solid waste district, and when you talk about our operation, once the garbage man picks up the waste from your house, they take it to one of our facilities. That's called a transfer station. So they dispose all of their waste at the transfer station, but it's still got to get to the landfill. So once that garbage man comes to one of our sites, they dispose of all of their solid waste on the tipping floor, and then we push that waste into a truck, and then we haul it from one of our 15 sites to our regional landfill, and then we place it in the landfill for final disposal. So we kind of handle every aspect of solid waste minus picking it up from your curbside, and then we also have a lot of diversion programs in between. So we're owned by 7 counties. We've been in the business since 1994. And we've been operating ever since. And I think when you talk about solid waste and the way that we're set up, I think a lot of people look at the advantages that we have with taking advantage of the economies of scale with all 7 counties and reducing the total cost of your operation. And I think since we've been in here for, about 25 years, the counties who own us, they really take a look and they understand the benefit that we provide to them, because our costs are so low compared to anybody else. When you're looking at tipping fees, our tipping fees are at $16 a ton,
Which is cheap.
It is
compared
cheap.
to, we deal with a lot of states, even a lot of companies in Oregon, especially start going to the northwest coast, and that's unheard of, right?
Even
What are the
within
counties? Which counties what are the 7 counties?
So the 7 counties that own us are Twin Falls County is the largest county with population. We go as far north as Blaine County, which is the Sun Valley, Ketchum, Bellevue area. We go as far west as Gooding County. Lincoln County is one of our counties. Jerome County, Cassia County, and Minidoka County. So basically the chunk of South Central Idaho is our district.
Okay. How many regional landfills are there? Then if you have 7 counties, how many regional ones are broken down?
So out of the regional system in the state of Idaho, we are the only regional solid waste district as of right now. because of the economies of scale and the flexibility that we have in our operation, you've got other counties that are starting to look at solid waste districts in the state. And now in the southeast side of the state, there's a new solid waste district that's trying to form, and they're trying to take the same structure that we have and do the duplicate what we're doing in eastern Idaho.
That's awesome. And the tipping fees, do you reevaluate those year to year, or they've been pretty consistent?
So our budget is really difficult, because we're owned by 7 different counties. When counties typically have a budget meeting, right, they're looking at one department, and one department is your operations, your employees, any other things that you need, right? Well, we've got 7 different counties, and not only are we doing landfill, we also have transportation, we have operations at transfer stations, we have a landfill gas to energy facility that we're producing gas off of, or electricity off of. So we're pretty sporadic, and we've got a lot of moving parts here, and you don't realize how in depth you are unless you're a part of the solid waste district. Our thing is, we don't want to be out in the news for anything negative, obviously, but we want to be in the news for things that are positive. And our direction is, let's keep costs low for our counties. Nobody can ever complain about that, and that's what we take pride in. Our tipping fee of $16 per ton is, I think, one of the lowest in the nation. We're probably the lowest 1% of the industry. But a typical tipping fee for the state of Idaho is $55, and even up in northern Idaho, you're at $100 a ton.
Oh, wow.
Especially if there's like a transfer in the middle of it. If you're not, it seems like that's where you get into your higher tip fees. Just kind of my outside perspective looking in is when you got to go to a transfer facility that then has to go to the actual landfill where the material is getting processed.
Yeah, you're right. And in a lot of those situations too, a transfer station might be owned by a private company, and the landfill might be owned by a county or a private company as well. So then there's always middlemen in between that as well. The good thing about us is we own everything in between. So our whole goal is keeping costs low, but that's not to jump over things that are important like safety as well,
Yeah.
So our whole thing is, let's keep the cost low so that our residents aren't getting overcharged for solid waste. So if we keep them happy, in turn we can have a good operation and do what we do.
So let's back it up the train like a little bit and out of the landfill part and just talk about you, kind of your background, where you came from, how you got into the landfill industry, and just kind of give everybody a little bit of perspective. You're a young guy, you've done pretty well with where you're at, and it's just, I always think it's good to take young people and say, explain to me how you got here, what the path was, where you went to school, what got you involved in the industry, and just kind of expand on that for us for a little bit.
So the one thing that I've noticed in solid waste is when you talk about people's stories, they don't have a story that says, when I was a little kid, I wanted to be in solid waste. It seems like you just end up in solid waste because you're there. It's a lot like any other profession, but my trek to get where I was a little bit off the beaten path. I went to school up at Washington State University on a baseball scholarship. I loved Washington State. We visit there every year. We go back for football. Once I was done with school, I got into the workforce, right? And I like to do stuff. I like to be physical. I grew up in a construction household. My dad ran projects. From me being a little kid, I can remember going out on the job site and stripping forms and oiling forms. So I knew I wanted to do something like that. It just so happened the way the cards fell, there was a guy who owned a gate business, putting security gates together, and he hired me because I didn't have a job, and we were talking. And
You already graduated school at that point? I like that.
And he said, hey, I'd like to offer you this job. And I'm thinking, why are you offering? You don't know anything about me. And we had a conversation. We had a great conversation. We just clicked, and he offered me a job. So for about 4 years, I was traveling between Twin Falls and Sun Valley, and we were putting big, intricate metal gates at big homes, and I really liked it, and they're not big construction projects, but those smaller construction projects, that's what I learned organization on. And when I bought my first house, I actually bought my first house across the street from the guy who ran the solid waste district. And we were neighbors, we were good friends, but I always flew my Washington State flag, and he went to University of Washington. So during football season, we always had the Washington flags.
It's Apple Cup.
That's right, Apple Cup. I lost a lot of bets on the Apple Cup. But that's what started our relationship, was the camaraderie between football and the state of Washington. And he had a job open up for an environmental specialist. He knew what I went to school for. I took a lot of environmental science classes. And he said, you should take a look at this job. And at the time, I didn't have insurance. I was paying for my vacation. I thought, this could be great. I had, kids at the time, so I had to start providing.
Were you still with the gate company?
Yeah, I'm still with the gate company. And so I took a look at the job description. I applied, and I didn't think much of it. I didn't think I was going to get the job, but it was a great opportunity. So I applied and came out, did my interview, and we still clicked, and he hired me for the job. And I was the environmental specialist for 5 years with Southern Idaho Solid Waste, and we had a really good working relationship. When I was doing the environmental specialist stuff, any environmental program I was in charge of, any diversion program that we had I was in charge of. And that first 5 years was a good opportunity for me to network with the people in the organization, create
Really
relationships.
learn the business.
Really
learn
the business.
Inside and out.
And from the people who were doing it, when I was visiting the transfer stations, what's going on? What do you guys need? Even though at the time I couldn't get them what they needed, I still, wanted to know what they did. If I could do something, I would. And I learned a lot from that. And when my boss retired, I really didn't think that I wanted to be the CEO, right away. I knew I wanted to someday, but I didn't know if I was ready for it then. So I submitted my application, and I submitted my resume, and my whole thing was I wanted the board to understand that I wanted the job in the future. And it just so happened that they hired me then. And I didn't know that I was ready for the job, but I've got a really competitive spirit, and when they offered it to me, I was like, okay, this is it, this is my opportunity, so fly with it. And when I was hired, that was 8 years ago, and we've done a lot of really good improvements here at the Solid Waste District since then. So we've just been building on those relationships, and it's been a little bit of a weird, transition to get to where I'm at, but I wouldn't change it because I love what I do, and I love the people that we do it with.
Team sports, man. I always said team sports are huge. Anybody that's played team sports, whether you're middle school, high school, college, or beyond, like that, and when it comes to business, like there's such a transfer of how to be on a team where there's a bunch of different personalities, a bunch of different alpha males or females or whatever that saying is. Like it just teaches you a lot on how to get along, which a lot of business in like an organization like this, especially from your position, is you're trying to get a bunch of people to get along and work with each other and fight for the same goals. And I've always said team sports just, man, they transfer so much into business. So.
Yeah, you learn a lot, When you're a little kid, you don't understand the things that you're learning in sports, but you have a competitive advantage. You always want to win, but at the same token, you're also looking at the people who are coaching you. And you're seeing how they're getting your team to work together towards goals. So, even though I was in sports, I did that. I learned a lot from that. But you realize that, your team is the organization.
Yeah.
You're essentially the coach. And it's up to you on whether you have a winning team or not. And it really comes down to, it's all on my shoulders. And we're a big proponent of lead by example, and that goes back to sports. You never want somebody on the team that's not giving their all.
Yeah.
Because everybody, they get disappointed with those players. So it makes you all strive to be the best that you can be. That's what I've found it.
No, I think it's huge. So when you took it over, when you went from the environmental specialist to now the CEO, the president, what was was there a big surprise? Was there something that just kind of like the difference between the two positions, or just the difference once you kind of got to the top and you now became the coach? So something you had that kind of made your eyes get big?
The number one apparent thing is, I told you earlier that I like to be active.
Yeah.
So I went from a real active role where I was always out doing stuff to sitting in front of my computer. So the first 2 years of this job, I gained 40 pounds because I was learning. I was in learning mode. I was in front of my computer. Any type of material that I could get, I wanted to grasp and retain. And so I put on some pounds for that, but that was the negative thing. I'd say the biggest surprise though when I took over was I had an ops mind. My mind is something that if somebody says, hey, do you think we could do it this way? I say yes before we can, and then I figure it out afterwards. But when I figure it out, I want it to be the right way. So I'm a get it done person.
Yeah.
And I'm good with money too, but that was never part of my job. I had my budget, my things that I needed to take care of. But now, we've got a $10 million budget that we're talking about, and how do you get that? We had a very intricate budget I was talking about earlier, and I'd say that was the biggest learning curve, but luckily our CFO was our first employee that we hired with the solid waste district. So who better to learn from than the person that's been doing it the longest? So she spent some time with me, and if it wasn't for her, I'd probably still be lost, but she taught me the ropes. And I'd say the first year, the finances were the biggest issue, but I know that I've got good people in place. So even though I didn't know everything from the beginning, I had a lot of respect for the people that had been, and I knew that they could show me the ropes. So we did good with that transition.
Well, that makes sense, 100%. So, what do you think the biggest challenge? That's the biggest challenge that you kind of face. But what's the biggest challenge that the landfill solid waste industry faces, that you're seeing right now? Maybe just from your perspective in Idaho, or as a whole. I mean, what's kind of the big. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word, but just the biggest challenge that you're going to see, or that you're seeing right now, to get people to understand what you do every day. Is that one of them, or?
Yeah, I think if you don't know solid waste, if you've never had a job in solid waste, you don't know what to expect, and you've got a lot of assumptions about what the solid waste industry is. And I think that we're kind of in the same boat with that. Is you guys have scrap and we're the landfill, right? Mm-hmm. So people don't always think the highest of landfill people or scrap people, right?
Correct.
But it doesn't mean that we're bad people. That's just your assumption from the beginning of what we do. And my feeling is people don't know what we do, so it's our job to let them know what we do. And we have a lot of great people that work for us, and we have a lot of people that get things done that work behind the scenes. So just trying to change the perception of the solid waste industry to be professional and efficient and well ran. That's been our biggest issue. But I think with the last 3 or 4 years of the projects that we've done here at the landfill, I think our community, our surrounding community, is starting to understand why solid waste is such an important infrastructure. You think of water and sewer and lights, and you think, man, if we don't have lights, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But flip that script and say, well, if there were nobody coming around to pick up your garbage, what do? Mm-hmm. And so it's important, and it's important for your community to know what it is that you do. So that's a big challenge for us, and you just got to stay steadfast at it and stay with the community. But that's always been a big one for us.
How do you get the information to the community with this social media, internet? Is there newsletters? How do you get new information to them if you want something done a little different on their end?
So we try to do stuff as efficient and effective as we can. We don't have a lot of people out there pushing that stuff through. We don't have a public outreach coordinator. We are very lean. So for us, it pays to have good relationships with people in the community. So when we have something that's going on, most of the time the news outlets are approaching us about it. But if they're not approaching us about something that's going on, we've been able to approach them, and they've been able to get the word out for us on a lot of this stuff. Other than that, we do internal emails and stuff. We don't do newsletters. But if you check out our website, it's just sisw.org. We do a lot of things. We think video is a big thing in the future. We hired some people to get some videos together because we asked ourselves the same question. How can we get this information out to people? So we took it upon ourselves to hire a digital company to come in and show people what we are and what we did. And we put those on on our website.
Cool.
Every time we go out we do a lot of civic presentations to Rotary, Kiwanis, stuff like that. So that's another way that we can get our information out to the community.
So give us, you've kind of referred to a couple projects, and I've seen them with my own eyes, and I can't wait to put them on video. But give us kind of a couple big projects that you guys have done here. I mean, what I love about the Recycled Idaho podcast, what I love about interviewing you is even your logo, right? You have the state of Idaho with the international recycling symbol. People don't, when they think about landfills, they don't think about recycling. They think about scrap metal. We've been recycling, since the turn of the century. People don't think about the scrap metal recycling business as a recycling business, right? It's more of a commodities business. The landfill, the same thing. I think people don't realize how much recycling is going on. And not just recycling from a commodity standpoint, but recycling from like a gas standpoint or something like that.
Right.
So just touch on a few of your kind of big projects that you've implemented since you've been here, and kind of just a brief explanation of how they work.
So I'd say probably the biggest project that we've done in recent years, we had a landfill gas to energy facility. So when we place waste into the landfill, waste starts to decompose. It's just like if you're at your house and you throw something in the trash and you open the trash bin, you can start to smell that putrid gas. That's the beginning of landfill gas. So when you take that trash and you put it into the landfill, it actually decomposes more and it creates a landfill gas. It is a gas. It can be emitted into the atmosphere, but we're regulated to take that landfill gas and deconstruct it or do something beneficial with it. So in 2014, we started looking at what do we do? We create this resource out there that is a natural resource, just like oil or any other resource. And when we're sitting at this table and talking with my board of directors, and they say, look, if we had oil underneath of us, we'd tap into it. Or if we had a gold mine, we'd be mining gold. Why are we not doing something with this landfill gas? So we started to take a look at our options and see what we could do. And it came down to constructing a landfill gas to energy facility. So right now, we're producing enough gas off of the landfill to send it through a lot of different processes. You guys will see it in a little bit. But we're producing enough electricity to power about 2,000 small homes, and that's just coming off of the landfill, So when you can do a beneficial use project off of something that you're producing naturally, for us, we're trying to get a win-win, and everybody knows costs are going up right now, and the only way we can generate more revenue is for us to raise our fees. We don't want to do that if we don't have to. So we sold this, the board saw this project as a revenue generator. Mm-hmm. And because it is generating revenue off of the power production, it will allow us to keep our costs lower for longer. So that was a 4-year project for us that we jumped through hoops for, Idaho Power with the power purchase agreement, through attorneys, financing, operations, construction. So that was a pretty difficult challenge, but we got through it. We got good people in place, and it was probably the most fun that I've had on a project.
How dollar amount wise, start to finish, what's the investment in a project like that for you guys?
So it's not giant. You hear $1 billion projects and $500 million projects, but for us, it was an $8 million project, and for us, an $8 million project.
That's a big. $8 million is a big project when your annual budget's around 10, right? So it's basically taking your annual budget, even though you're spreading over 4 years, and even if you're financing some of the equipment or however that works, it's still a big project because it's all in the scope of the entity that's doing the project. We look at it the same way if we were to buy a piece of equipment. If we were some big, large scrap metal recycling company, they buy 5 Cinnabogin material handlers in a given period. If we buy one every couple of years, we feel like we're doing pretty good. Right. So I think it's all on the size of the entity that's doing the project.
So to throw that on top, you hit a great point. You know, you got a $10 million budget, an $8 million project. So another thing that my board asked me to do was, can you implement the project without raising the tipping fee? So we had to implement an $8 million project on a $10 million operating budget without increasing the tipping fee of $16 per ton. That was the difficult part. You know, that's a lot to do. That's a big ask, and we just kept trekking along until we got it done. And so it was a big project, but it was at the end of the tunnel when you complete those projects. You know, it's always, hey, we did it. We did it. You know, we didn't hire somebody to do it. We did it.
Yeah.
So it's always great to hear.
We talk about that all the time internally. Is, you know, when we take on a project, whether it's a podcast or whatever else, like, we like to do it, the work ourselves. I mean, we could hire somebody, we could do this, we could do that, but I think you learn the most about it when you do it yourself, and you get input from we've taken input and got a lot of great input and feedback from a lot of different sources. You know, do this and try this and look at it this way, or whatever the case may be. But when you do it yourself, it's a game changer, because now you know that deal inside and out.
And another thing that was a big thing for us, you know, to switch over is we would hire people to come in and do a job, but we would always send 1 or 2 employees with them, so we had some history and, you know, we knew what was going on too. And it was, you know, employees coming back to us saying, hey, we could do it a little bit better. You know, why are we hiring somebody when we can do it? And, you know, it was my employees approaching me saying, hey, let's do more. We could do this. Yeah. And it's kind of like, okay, if you want to do it, let's do it, you know. And it's just built on to now we're doing so many projects that solid waste, you would not think solid waste would be doing, you know. And that's the stuff that we like and our employees like, and it builds that. And it's just this, you know, it's a sustainable business with your employees. They don't want to do the same thing every single day. So we can get these things out there. They love the challenge, and they like to complete them, and they like to tell me, I did it and I did it good. So
and it's recycling at its finest. Like, I mean, that is recycling. It's not, you know, recycling can be a ton of things. It can be cardboard, it can be aluminum cans, it can be mulch, but people just kind of, I think that one slips their mind, you know.
Right.
Landfill gas, now you're powering 2,000 homes, the ability to power 2,000 homes locally, and you're driving and you're keeping the tip fees down, you know, which is, people don't realize how important that is on just the granular level of the individual household. But when you're talking about businesses that are, you know, that are paying to get rid of materials, whether you're building projects or whatever, I think it makes, when we talk about people developing facilities and stuff in Idaho, part of that is what's it going to cost us to get rid of, you know, the waste? What's it going to cost us for building demo? What's it going to cost us for, I mean, some of those costs get figured in, and those are kind of sometimes driving factors to get people to move from California or Washington, Oregon to Idaho.
Right.
What the tip fees are? What's the power cost?
Yeah, that's all what we're seeing right now. I mean, in our area, I know up in the Boise here, you've seen a lot of growth too, but I think probably the the Magic Valley area is probably the second highest in growth in the last 4 or 5 years, and we're seeing the things that you're talking about. You know, we're seeing city councils and county commissioners and economic development companies getting together and knowing how good of a business environment Idaho has, and they're bringing things out like, look at the, you know, rate for power, look at the rate for water, look at your solid waste disposal fees. And we have seen a lot of huge companies come into our area, you know, Chobani, Cliff Bar. There's probably 15, 20 companies in here that have had, you know, huge investments, and that's a turn of something that we're dealing with, you know, and it's just good business all around right now. It's been a good 5-year stretch for us in Southern Idaho.
I would assume that, like, a company like Chobani, you know, as much power as they use, and I would assume they create a decent amount of waste, solid waste. I mean, those are 2 big decision factors when they decide where we're going to move. real property taxes, power costs,
Right.
solid waste tipping fees. Like those are big line items for them.
They are, and our company, unfortunately, because we're not on the economic development, we're not recruiting these companies, and we don't sit on boards where we are recruiting those companies. We're just dealing with solid waste. So it's great that the community is growing, but that just makes us have to be that much more flexible, because we are not always expecting the added volume, so we just have to deal with it and, calculate our moves and do it the right way. So it's been interesting, but it's been great. We've seen just in the last 5 years, our solid waste volumes go from 200,000 tons to 260,000 tons. That's a huge,
What
volume
time span is that?
in about a 5-year time span.
That's what that is. That's not year in, year out.
Yep.
Okay.
How many more employees does that take to handle that much more volume? Is it a double of the employee? Was it a triple? How many more? Let's say when you took over as president to today, how many more people are in the organization than when you started?
So when I started, we were approximately right at the 50, 55 mark of full-time employees. Right now we're at about 75. We've got about 80 total employees, but so we've increased about 20 employees during that time, but it's not just from additional solid waste. Since I've taken over, we didn't do waste haul before, so we didn't have trucks. We weren't hauling our waste back and forth. We did to a couple counties, but when I took over, we were going to see a huge increase on our contract, at least a 25% increase. And at that point, Stephanie, our CFO, and I sat down and said, look, this is a huge increase. What if we bid against ourselves? What if we purchased our own trucks? What if we did it?
Yeah.
So that added some additional employees. This landfill gas to energy facility adds employees. I'd say at the landfill itself, we probably added 5 employees from the 2,000, 200,000 tons to now.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really increased a lot just because of solid waste volumes. It's because our growth is open and we've gone down so many different avenues. We've opened up our market internally.
Yeah.
So, but it's been good. We don't hire a lot of people. We like to stay with what we have. And I like to incentivize my people. If we are doing the work of 10 people and we're only doing it with 8, we try to see how can we accommodate them. Can we do something else for them? If we're saving that money, maybe that means we can be more efficient with some equipment that we're purchasing with them. So it's been a good 5-year growth period, and it's been nice to see everything get to where it's at. But my feeling is it's not slowing down right now, and I don't see it slowing down too much in the next couple of years in our area.
Yeah, I was talking to Nate earlier, and it's we have the windows shut for light purposes, but you look outside right now, and you guys got some good snow last night. One thing about the landfill industry, I've noticed rain, sleet, snow, shine, 110, -10, the trash don't stop coming. The waste doesn't stop coming. You have to be able to work in all conditions. Right?
Here's the deal. In 25 years of operation, I think we've only closed our doors early or for the day 6 times in 25 years. So you've had a lot of events through then, and it's true. We had a fire a couple of years ago up in Sun Valley, and we had to close the transfer station down for 2 weeks, and we got over 300 phone calls. What do we do with our garbage? What do we do? And we just kind of had to deal with them. We were able to open up, with sheriff's deputies going in and firefighters and stuff, but it goes to show, they came to us and said, can you open up your facility? So it's a need, it's something that people have relied on, and it's something that you come to expect as solid waste disposal.
And that's the thing about, the landfill industry is nobody likes to talk about it unless their trash isn't disappearing. I posted that video the other day on that speech I gave to the last year at Boise State, and I was telling my wife, they think about trash, recycling, landfills, the blue bin, gray bin, that's it, and then they're on to the next one. And that's why it's super important to understand how it works. I mean, it's super important to like take the time as a community member or whatever, just understand like what the landfill is doing for you, because when that 2-week period comes, when there's a fire or something happens and your trash doesn't disappear and it starts piling up in your garage or outside your house, then everybody seems to become a landfill expert.
Right.
Like, what should we do? How do we handle this? You're like, we've been doing this for a long time, guys, you know?
So our whole motto is we like to be proactive instead of be reactive. So, you know, anything that we think is going to be a problem, we try to be proactive and fix it. But I think you hit the nail on the head. You know, you have to know your business. And I think when you look around at solid waste organizations or departments around the United States, I think you can look at how they operate and know if the person knows the business or not, because you got to know what the business is and what you need to do to make the community right, and your county commissioners or your board or your boss or whoever it is, you have to know the business. And in order to have a good solid waste operation, you have to know the business in and out. And I'm not just talking about me, but the people that we have, you know, I trust these guys with knowing exactly what to do and how to operate. So it's a good thing.
So, real quick, what do you enjoy the most about your job? What do you enjoy the most about the industry? What gets you up and gets you going for the day?
It's the people, you know. The first thing I do every morning when I come in is I talk with my key people, whether that's, you know, calling somebody at a different site or just coming in and talking with the CFO or the environmental manager and saying, hey, what's on the agenda this week, and just talking to people. That's the best thing, is we've got some really great people, and you don't know that unless you talk to them. And the thing that gets me up every morning is providing a safe work environment for our employees, that they can come in, they can get paid a decent competitive wage and provide for their family and be safe and go home every night to do it. And that's really what gets me up and gets me going every time, are the people that we, you know, work with every day.
Nick, what do you got, Bob?
I saw you were in that 40 under 40 on, I think I saw that on LinkedIn. If you could go back and give yourself maybe some advice when you're in your 20s to build your career, or someone else in their 20s, what would you do? And that same person that is trying to be a professional, build his career, really trying to establish himself, how would you attract that person to the landfill industry?
So I attract people to the landfill industry every time I talk to them. You know, I try to get the stigma to get away from what people think, and I try to tell them what reality is about the solid waste industry. And it's highly engineered. There's a lot of science by it. There's a lot of business in it. There's big money. It's big equipment. And if you want to come in and do the same thing every day, solid waste isn't your gig, you know. But this is something that you come in, day out. We have 4-year projects that happen, and you just got to plug away on them. So it's not the same thing every day. And I think that's really important. But the biggest advice I could give to somebody coming in is, if you're entering the workforce and you really don't know a lot about it, or even you do, you know, you might have a college degree in it, you don't know the business yet. So my biggest advice is get involved in the business, but be as quiet as possible. Don't make comments just for the first year and a half. Suck it all in.
Just put your head down and
listen, you know, get all of that information. And if you do that, I think after a year of doing that and starting to implement those things you learn, you pick up a lot of pieces from the people that you work with or the people you work for and their direction of the company, and you get some inside information. You know, instead of coming in with your own ideas, there might be ideas there in place. And if you start talking beforehand, you know, it starts to get the wheels off the track. So listening and just absorbing everything when you get in, that's the biggest piece of advice that I would have to give. But solid waste and recycling industry is a great industry to get in. I talked with a woman who works up at Republic Services up in Boise, and she said, you know, I started working at Republic Services out of college, and I came here, and the gal that I was taking the job for, she said, oh, you're going to love this job. Once you're in solid waste, you never leave. And she looked at the girl and said, honey, this is just a stepping stone. I'm not going to be here for more than a couple of years. And now I think she's been with the company for 20 years, you know. She hasn't
Just
left.
gets in your blood.
That is what it is, you know. You get into it, you get sucked into it, and you know what it is, and it's a great industry to be in.
Yeah,
So,
once you learn there's a future there, and
Right.
I mean, from the culture you guys have here, I mean, people could really see that there is a future. There's room for growth if they can put their head down.
And it's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Consistent.
it's consistent, but it's growing. I mean, there's going to be more recycling in 5 years than there's going to be less recycling. I mean, there's going to be better methods of doing things in 5 years, not the same methods. And I think that's what I love about the recycling industry is it's always changing. Something new, something's coming, something different. And I said that was what always made it exciting for me was it was always something new around the corner. You know, whether it was a project or a piece of equipment or a way of handling something or a new place to ship it or whatever it was never just the same old day-to-day, you know, yeah, I know what to expect. I'm going to be here for 40 years and it's going to change.
Right.
You know?
Because we get that question a lot too. Like, what do you guys do? Is it the same thing every day? And absolutely not. There's always a new curveball every day almost. You know,
Yeah.
oh, I didn't see that. And then with us, we've both been doing the recycling for a long time, everyone at this table. But I'm learning new stuff all the time. Or things change. Or the vendor for this product goes somewhere else, you know. So I think even being not really new to the industry, continuing to learn. That's why going to those expos like at BSU coming up in March, like those are really educational for myself because I don't know a whole lot about the landfill end of it, but it's nice for us to go there and just learn that much more and find out how we can help you guys on the metal recycling end.
So give us a real quick before we go. Tell us about the deal in March. Tell us about your involvement in the industry and kind of how what your position is there and kind of how you help promote the landfill industry here in Idaho.
So the Idaho Solid Waste Association is made up of anybody in the solid waste and recycling industry in the state of Idaho. We've got about 175 members, which is quite a bit. It's a pretty big organization for solid waste and recycling, but I think that just goes to show how much interest there is. Anybody who has a facility in Idaho is a part of what we do. We get together 2 times a year, one time in the spring. It's an educational conference, so anything that's going on in the industry, we hit that. We have probably 30 presentations on a 2-day period, and then we have operator training before that as well. So it's a good opportunity for anybody that's in the solid waste industry, whether you're an engineer or an operator, an owner, anything, to just be a part of and network with people and hit industry trends. So that's kind of what we do. We also do a tour in the fall where we go to a solid waste site and we do a 2-day tour and we see as much as we can. This last year we went up to Roosevelt, Washington, and we looked at a very large landfill up there and then a small city landfill. So we like to get out and see what other people are doing because we know that's where you learn and you can take some to put in your operation. I'm the president of the Solid Waste Association right now. I'm on my last year. I've been a part of ISWA for a long time, and I know that we've done a lot to get it organized and get a direction for the Idaho Solid Waste Association. And I know with all of the people that we have in place with the association, whoever takes over next, I know they'll take that ball and run and just keep getting the organization a little bit better and better each year.
So I'd love to end on this question just because I think it's super fascinating. Depends on the individual, but give me like a mentor or somebody in your life that, that's, whether it's in the industry, out of the industry, someone that's kind of stood out to you, that's kind of helped, make you successful. Which, to me, you're successful, you're under 40 years old, you're CEO, president of a pretty large corporation. Not even a corporation, it's like an extension of a government entity, right? But give me somebody that's really stood out to you.
So I'd say probably for non-business mentors, I'd say my parents. My dad was in the construction industry. his whole life, and that was great to see, you know, so you get the operations side on that. My parents were divorced growing up. My mom was a loan officer, so she really banged into my head, you know, having good credit, paying your bills. So I got the financial side from her, and then the ops side from him. And you know, you get stuff from your parents, morals and personality. So I got a lot of good things from both of them. They framed who I was as a person, you know, along with my stepmom as well. My stepmom and my dad raised me. I lived with them growing up. I visited my mom quite a bit every other weekend. So you get these things from your parents, and they shaped me who I am. I've got faults and I know it, but they did a good job on trying to get the good morals out there for business. And then I'd say as far as business goes, a mentor, it sounds kind of weird, but my wife, you know, every time that I think I want to do something, or I'm kind of, do I want to join this board, or do I want to do this? She's always the person behind me, supporting me, saying, hey, this is good for you, you'd be good at it, do it. So between
She kind of pushes you.
Oh, bad.
It's like you're pushing.
Not bad. I shouldn't say bad.
She pushes you to.
That's awesome.
She pushes you to do things.
She
you know?
pushes me to be a better person.
Out of your comfort zone, probably. And I mean, that's a good spouse.
When you get, you want the spouse that builds you up, right?
Yeah.
And my wife she's that person. I mean, it's awesome. So between having the good foundation from, you know, all three of my parents, and then having the support from my wife, you know, I'd say all of them mentored me to be the person who I am right now, and my wife's still helping me out with that. So hopefully it's a good thing in 10 years, and we'll see.
All right, last one. If somebody wants to get a hold of you directly, what's the best way?
Our email is really easy, SISW for Southern Idaho Solid Waste, so SISW.org. My email is jbartlome, BARTLOME, at SISW.org, and then I'm also on LinkedIn too. So Josh Bartlome on LinkedIn. Any of those, if you want to get a hold of me and contact me, information's on the website or LinkedIn. So
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
appreciate the opportunity. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Recycled Idaho. And as we continue the journey across this great state, we look forward to bringing you more stories of people and organizations putting in the work to do the right thing.